A little while back, we held an exciting webinar, which was all about how AI can help HR and L&D senior execs transform skills gaps into business. There was a lively debate. We had some interesting speakers. Nabel Crowhurst, who's a senior HR executive, Perry Timms, who's founder and chief energy officer of Perry Timms HR, and Carolyn Shepherd, who's founder and lead consultant of Emlyn AI. You can, of course, watch the whole replay at skillsassess.ai. But I just want to jump into one of those questions as I think you'll find it interesting. So let's get into it. Let's move to the first topic, which is why current skills strategies are falling behind and what it means for business performance. So can I ask Perry, would you like to comment on that?
There has to be some kind of antidote to the current situation and maybe the trough that we find ourselves in. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a philosophical but also well-researched concept, which is the 100-year life that Linda Grattan wrote about some time ago. And its links into the cycle of education, right? So I've seen some governmental moves to make sure that what we're talking about when we talk about education full stop, so we're talking about the whole schooling system and beyond, further education and so on, is that it's built for 3-stage life, and we don't have that anymore. We have a 100-year life. We have multifaceted mosaic-like careers. We have all sorts of things about transients and contingent workers and so on. So the whole thing about how we skill in the world of work is basically an outdated modality. So I don't want to be overly sort of critical about our L&D sort of fraternity and so on. But, you know, we've got to start to take a real lead on what skills are all about. And I think the first thing we have to get right is the terminology. We have competency profiles and frameworks. We have skills, taxonomies, and so on. And we talk about capabilities. I'm not quite sure we genuinely know what space we're in, why, and how these things stack up, because they do. Competencies are almost like the features that you see in everyday working life, right? So you are competent in how you process and apply governance and so on. Skill is where perhaps you come into play because there's an exception, there's something emergent, it's different, and you have to kind of be a little bit more inventive. And then capabilities, I think, are the absolutely crucial things that help you as an organization through people deliver in turbulent, changing and evocative sort of backdrops that we find ourselves in. So I see them as a stack, and I see them in a way that we need to talk about levels of proficiency. I think we talk far too much about productivity equations like you talked about from the McKinsey report. But what does that mean when we talk about proficiency? Proficiency is how applied and brilliant and impactful are you at competency level, at skill level, and at capability level? And until we get that sort of thing right, I think our landscape and our map is a bit vague, a bit devoid of the kind of pit stops on the way and the punctuations in the noise that we need. So I guess I start with that. What is the whole philosophy of an organization around demonstrating levels of proficiency at organizational level, at skill level, and then at competency level? And I think if we can start to engineer that and set that against a 100-year variable life and career choice, we will have a greater chance of trying to catch the wispy things that we talk about when we talk about skills agendas. They're wispy, they're cloudy, they're vague, and they're difficult to grab. We've got to get some real grab on this. And to bring it back to the topic of artificial intelligence, there are people now going, here we go, we're going to potentially sort of lose loads of jobs at entry level or in algorithmic work. Yes, we are, but we're also going to use it to help us become more efficient, more quickly with different learning curves. And it is going to be our sidekick in how we make sense of the world. So we've got to program it in. So I know one university lecturer who insists that people use AI in their learning, because what he says is, I want you to use it, and then I want you to critique it. I want you to test it. I want you to know where it's deficient, where it's hallucinated, where it's wrong, and where it's not what you would say. And then you understand why, and then you augment your AI piece of submission with the brilliance that you've got and the uniqueness that you've got and the imagination that you've got, which they'll never have. And I love that kind of fusion of using it as a tool, not outsourcing it completely, but we master it. It doesn't master us. So those, I think, are some of the skill dilemmas. How do we weave it into this 100-year life, this non-episodic, this in the flow, this complicated stack of competencies, skills, and capabilities? That's where I'm going to start us.
I think just to build on those points you've made, Perry, which are absolutely on point, is I think there's also a societal shift in how we look at the difference in our lives between work and life. I think historically we've used the term work-life balance, and actually it's much more of a blend now. And that is, I think, driven by technology. So what technology's done is enabled people to be able to work from anywhere, anytime, in a lot of jobs. That then creates an environment in which people expect and want to do that and want to be able to mix in with their lives, work and traveling and experiences, rather than that very sort of linear approach of I work sort of 48 weeks of the year and 4 weeks I get as my holiday. People don't want to work like that anymore. And that's where technology has enabled people to work quite differently. And we see that even more now with the next generation that's coming in, the expectation of being able to adapt where they work, how they work. The societal shift then is going to be at the other end of our kind of life when we get close to retirement. So the concept of we work 9 till 5 for our entire lives until we hit retirement age, which was, I think, 65, and now it's probably 67. And now by the time I get to it, probably be 70. And that was because we all worked so hard. We just tried to get through to that point in which we're not working. And actually what I see now is so many people in their 60s starting new careers, starting businesses, because we see life in a different way. We're not just waiting to retire, we're living the whole way through. And I think that's a great shift. But the infrastructure around us, like education, like the way in which organisations are set up, like pension schemes, all of those kind of things haven't actually cottoned on to the fact that how we all want to live and experience our lives is evolving quite significantly because of technology.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.